Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello dear friends, welcome to this third lecture of Module 2 on water-rock interaction or rock-water interaction. In previous lectures, we have discussed about surface and groundwater and their characteristics and participation in water-rock interaction. In these lectures, we are going to address one of very critical problem due to water rock or rock water interaction as weathering. In these lectures, we will not confine to rock or rock strata only. We will also consider soil mass or soil layer as per requirement of these lectures. We will elaborate how water is playing role in weathering of geoground or geomaterials in detail. For this, we will discuss some attributes of soil and rocks to elaborate this concept for an easy understanding. In this lecture of Module 2, under rock water interaction or water rock interactions, we are going to discuss about weathering processes and classification. In these lectures, we are going to cover weathering as a background or introduction, then classification of weathering, and in detail about the mechanical weathering. Friends, as we have already discussed, the water cycle, the water is a rain or through melt coming on the surface of the earth. Some of the parts of the waters enter inside the subsurface recognized as groundwater. Those waters flowing on the surface in specific manner are bounded under confined boundary, then we are going to show as a river, or confined boundary as a lake or some ponds, and then finally enters inside the sea. So therefore in this way we have already discussed the movement of the water from atmospheric side toward the landslide and land side toward the oceanic side and oceanic side toward the again in form of vapor to atmospheric. Friends, as you know, the weathering is a very common process, generally occur in case of rock, in case of synthetic materials also. Here we are going to discuss about the weathering. So weathering is a weakening or breaking of geoground made up of rock, rocky strata, or even soil. The weathering is simply weakening of rocks through disintegration or through decomposition. In view of disintegration and decomposition, we are able to categorize weathering in two categories. First is a physical weathering. Another is a chemical weathering. And in addition to these two, we have biological weathering. caused by biological component. The weathering caused by biological component may belongs to the physical or mechanical, may belong to the chemical. If performed through the solutions released from the biological component, they fall under the chemical. And if then they fall in physical, so we will discuss. First, we are going to elaborate this concept of weathering. Weathering is simply weakening or breakdown of geoground or geomaterial. Geoground or geomaterial comprised of rocks, soils or derived material or rock strata. And friends, as you know, none of the geomaterials or geoground are insusceptible to weathering. Means none of the rock is immune to the weathering. Therefore, you think this phenomena is a very problematic in field of engineering geological applications. If we are going to see this phenomena in view of stress and deformation or change deterioration, then we can say that the weathering can be defined if any process or any phenomena that are able to exert stress on geoground are within geomaterial and cause weakening of rock or rock strata into smaller pieces. If we are going to see our monuments, different sites and different structures, then we can easily observe the number of statues present on the monuments, present on some pillars, present on stupa, without hand, without nose or without ear. Some of the wall, decorated wall, may be looked and painted type. Number of examples we have in Ajanta Ellora cave, we have in number of cave, Bach caves, number of cave in stone valleys, and several fort, temples, monuments, etc. We have varieties of example about the impact of weathering. Here we can see the number of examples of the weathering. One of the very important observations you can made in Bach cave, where this Bach cave geologically made up of this Vindhyan strata nearby the Bach town in Dhar district in Madhya Pradesh. This Bach cave is highly affected by both physical as well as physical disintegration and chemically decomposition. Similar to this, number of sculptures, monuments and others which we have already discussed, the number of statues decorated on walls of the monuments showing without hand, without foot, without ear, without nose. This is nothing due to weathering. A number of sites we are facing problem when we are going to construct dams and others. Then there is a lot of problem due to weathered strata. As we have already discussed in case of our weathering ground, the intact portion inside this, and when we are moving toward the surface sides, we are getting dislocated or disintegrated material or decomposed material. as this type of phenomena is sensitive to the surrounding factors, may be extended far and far. So this type of ground we have already discussed in our first lectures, very problematic. Now, if we are going to see about the different type of weathering or weathering process, then we can say that the weathering process we can able to divide in two categories broadly. Then in addition to these two categories, we are going to elaborate a third category, that is due to biological activity. So if we are going to see about the classification, then we can say that the weathering process can be categorized as physical weathering. First point, as physical weathering. This physical weathering is also known as mechanical weathering. Then second type is the chemical weathering, and third type is a biological weathering. Physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering. Physical weathering is performed due to mechanical action, due to development of stresses, maybe due to change in thermal state, due to change in water interaction, due to change in state of water, due to change in action forces acting along with water and others. So first we are going to define about the mechanical or physical weathering. Mechanical or physical weathering. If we are going to see, take this example, the rock and soil, particularly the rock, geomaterial consisting of rock and soil. If we are going to see, take one example of sedimentary rocks, and we can see the number of grains. These grains this type of grain filled by some derived material recognized as matrix. Suppose take example of sandstone. Sandstone, here grains of the quartz and feldspar supported by some finer material, ferruginous material or clay material or any type of material we are recognizing as a matrix, that is a mechanically derived material. So if we are going to see the contact petrologically, the grain may be in direct contact with grain. The grain and grain may have some difference, the floating type of nature. The grain may have linear contact. The grain may have concavo-convex contact. So due to, my meaning is here, due to the different type of contacts, there is some gap present in arrangement of the grain. These gaps we are recognizing as voids. We will discuss in our future classes, but at the situation required, therefore, we are going to elaborate in very brief. So voids are open spaces present in rock or soil. These voids, when we are going to estimate in qualitative way, Then the voids are also known as pores, and we are going to measure porosity. In our engineering geology, we are going to consider discontinuity at microscopic level in our future discussion. Here we are going to see only porosity and interconnected pores is effective pores. You have open boundary, then permeability. So both the voids and pores, the availability of voids in rock is a limited and a small size, but in case of soil more, therefore permeability is also. So we are not going in such complications. We are going to elaborate mechanical weathering, and mechanical weathering is nothing, it is simply disintegration of rock or rock strata. If we are going to see geomaterial, the geomaterial consisting of rock and rock strata means the rock along with some interfaces are may be derived as present in form of soil. So here we are going to discuss about the rock. The rock made up of different minerals and filling materials in form of matrix, cement or some glass or direct contact, able to show some porosity and permeability, or in continuum characterization some microscopic discontinuities. The release of grains or release of blocks from rock mass or rock strata and release of grains from rock by mechanical means due to development of stresses is known as mechanical weathering. So if we are going to summarize, then we can summarize mechanical weathering is a phenomena of disintegration of rock caused by mechanical process. If we are going to see the chemical weathering, then the chemical weathering is a decomposition of rocks able to transform the composition of minerals and therefore overall composition of rocks. For example, if granite rock consisting of quartz, feldspar, some part of mica and others, then the quartz is resistant to the chemical action of water, but the feldspar is more sensitive. Then the feldspar changes in form of clay minerals, and this granite finally changes in form of shale or clay stone or siltstone due to chemical. In addition to this, certain bacteria and other present in soil responsible for release of some type of acid, carbonic acid and others when utilizing carbon dioxide and others. Then responsible for change in components of the rock chemically as a result of chemical weathering. Then some of the work due to development of plant roots in rock going to disintegrate the rock, and the work of the mouse is also going to disintegrate the rock, and different type of biological component responsible for the weathering either in mechanical side or chemical side. Here particularly related to rock water interaction or water rock interaction, again we are going to move towards water, and we are going to discuss in this lecture about the water related weathering. We have already discussed and we have already discussed about the water cycles and others. Then first, as we have already discussed, the water, the water water we are having in form as a solid, as a liquid, and as a gaseous form. Solid forms, as we are observing in case of the glaciers and others. The liquid forms we are observing in case of rivers, in case of ponds, in case of the water present in ocean. So if we are going to recognize in view of form, then we can say that in view of form, we are going to see first the water in solid form, and then in liquid form. We are observing the number of water bodies present in surface, present on surface, and present within the ground. As far as solid water is concerned, then we are having this type of problem, this type of solid water in high altitude area, particularly Himalayan area, Alps area, or some of the countries where they feel temperature at the freezing level, like Norway, many European countries, some part of America and others. If we are going to see the solid water, that is the ice or snow, then due to temperature difference, the water changes in form of snow and ice, and when the water changes from liquid to solid, from liquid to solid, from liquid to solid, then there is a change in volume. Due to continuous change in volume with respect to freezing and thawing, there is a development of stresses. There is a development of stresses which we are going to expand the already existed discontinuity. So here we are going to see, you can see this diagram here taken from the Himalayan region. The sum of the discontinuities having this solid phase due to freezing, which was earlier in liquid phase. If the liquid water filled in the fractures and later on solidified in form of ice, then there is increase in volume. Here we can see this type of action we are going to recognize as a frost action. Frost action is defined as the process involves due to freezing and thawing. This process is also known as frost welding. This process is responsible due to freezing and thawing, means the freezing and thawing induced change in volume, and the change in volume is responsible for cyclic or repetitive development of stress. Here you can see, here in this diagram is a very taken from this some source. Here earlier this zone was filled by water, and during freezing at low temperature, freezing temperature, the water filled inside come in form of ice, solid in nature. Due to change in state from liquid to solid, there is a change in volume. There is increment in volume. That increment in volume is going to push this block away from each other. Means due to development of stresses toward this side, You can see here also the development. These are the discontinuities where earlier there was some water, and after solidification, then this water is changes in form of ice, and due to transformation of water, liquid water as a solid water in form of ice, then there is development of some stresses. And that stresses, suppose here field water, due to this field water there is a development of stresses away from each other, going to show this pulling, and this zone is a feeling under tension. We have already discussed in our previous discussions about the tensile stress and compression stress. Due to tension, what happens? Gradually there is a disintegration of this block, and this block come in form of small pieces. You can see this example, this side example. These two rock blocks is going to leave each other and move from this direction to away from this, and this direction. Next important aspect also related to cold region, and this aspect is actually pressure release due to movement of the glaciers. Here you can see when, and suppose this strata is earlier loaded by some this ice deposit. It means this strata is under stress of a specific value. When there is a retreat of this mass is limited to this only. This limited to means there is decrease in stress condition due to retreat of these glaciers. So there is a change in stress condition, release of the pressure, and the release of the pressures income in form of the development of discontinuity. Development of discontinuity in strata that finally responsible for breaking this rock strata into smaller pieces as a result of mechanical weathering. So retreats of glacier also responsible for such type of splitting of the rock or development of the fracture network responsible to make this whole strata in form of smaller rock pieces. Slacking is another aspect in contrast to this freezing and thawing or freezing and defreezing. Here we are having some effect related to wetting and drying, saturation and desaturation, wetting and drying. Due to process of alternate wetting and drying, rocks, especially those containing some clay minerals and others, some soft minerals. The rocks containing soft minerals are more prone to slacking, and there is a continuous reduction in constituents due to abrasion of materials and responsible for formation of this type of number of discontinuities due to slacking. Material enter in water are released due to continuous wetting and drying cycle. This type of aspects we are able to experimentally also derive. We will discuss our future discussions. Next type that is important action due to water is a hydraulic action, and this hydraulic action is actually nothing. It is a development of the shear force of the waters when going to move on the surface and going to crushing along the movement of the water, in case of river also, falling water also. And this type of problem we are observing particularly in coastal areas due to repetitive change in scenario of the water flow. Here we are going to take example of the water and hydraulic action. This water and hydraulic action perform in these three modes: due to attrition, due to abrasion, and due to solution. So solution we are not going to discuss, we will discuss in our future classes. Here we are going to see the attrition. When the materials, here you can see the materials moving along with the water and they started colliding each other due to frictional resistance observed at the bottom side are observed due to collision of these constituents moving, then we are going to recognize as attrition. Here abrasion due to continuous interaction of rock pieces to rock pieces assisted by the water flow, responsible for release of the constituents of the rock, and finally there is a reduction in size or in shape, and these all the materials moving in water along with this flow conditions, then there is able to show this type of abrasion or reduction and responsible for the weathering. Here we can see here the waterfall. This waterfall, if we are going to hit this zone of rocks, then going to cut this zone and responsible for the undercutting. If this zone is suppose, here I try to draw, this zone is made up of different rocks. Suppose it is hard rock, previous one, first one is a hard rock, second one is a soft rock, third is again hard rock. And if the water is flowing here, due to this flow of water, similar you can see here in case of the waterfall, due to this what happens, there is cutting of the material. If this also soft, then this type of strata we are going to get, means this part is going to release from this, and good example of weathering. Here we can see this powerful waves in oceanic area going to interact with this rock cliffs, and when this powerful waves going to strike with this rock cliffs, then in some of the discontinuity present inside this rock cliffs is going to interact with this waves, the water field inside. The waves are going to cut this type of cliff gradually and take the material along with the returning currents, and the water induced or assisted air present in this column shows violent type of actions during the interaction and return of the, due to compression and release of compression. So this type of aspect related to mechanical aspect we have already discussed in brief, and we will elaborate in our future classes. Reference, you can find the majority of the components belonging to this engineering geology book written by Gangopadhyay. Yes, and then some of the aspects you can recognize for the Woodkari and Matsuyama book related to rock mechanics, and then Walthen and Kashalugulu books may be helpful in this regard, but limited. As far as conclusion is a concern, we have concluded here about the concept of weathering, responsible for various kinds of changes on Earth's surface and subsurface. And weathering, as you know, is a process of weakening of rock and rock strata or even soil. And it can be divided as physical, chemical, and biological weathering. And mechanical weathering is responsible for the disintegration of rock and rock strata and associated aspects. Dear friends, in this class we have discussed about weathering, concept of weathering in generalized way, and types of weathering, then about physical, mechanical, chemical and biological weathering as a categorization, then in detail about the mechanical weathering with different type of examples due to change of liquid water in form of solid water in hilly terrain, high altitude area, and due to the movement of water either through surface movement in form of river or in form of the waterfalls or in form of the oceanic wave. And next class we will try to elaborate about the chemical aspect of water rock interaction. Thank you.